Welcome back to the Football Forecast. It's Brazil against Croatia. Unfortunately for most, you're probably sat there thinking this is only going one direction. But fortunately for us, we're going to try and even that debate, hopefully. I think that's the plan.
Are we?
I hope so.
Who's taking the Croatia side on this?
Croatia have made it this far for a reason.
Yeah.
I don't for a second, before I get absolutely clipped up for this, I don't for a second think Croatia actually have a great chance against Brazil.
Right.
But what I would like to say is they do make it to this stage in the tournament. They are masters of extra time and penalties. They love dragging a game along. And have Brazil actually had a challenge yet this tournament?
That's a good point. That's a really good point. Also, though, you're masters of getting to extra time. I don't know if that really works at this stage for Croatia. Because if you think about people like Luka Modric, he's 37 now.
Yeah, and he
we're talking about Ronaldo. We're talking about some of these players who are coming towards the end of their careers, let's say. I mean, Modric, obviously, no one would argue that he's not been the most incredible player for Croatia and in club football as well. But you can see that he maybe hasn't got the legs on him to stay on for the full 90, let alone going to 120, and especially not against Brazil.
I do feel, though...
Even if they have had basically a few buys to get this far.
Brazil...
They haven't been taxed, you're right. Okay,
Yeah.
so your angle is they haven't been taxed.
Yeah, and also, my thing is, Brazil are sort of playing in this tournament where they're untouchable at the moment. Like, every team they come up against, you've got, like, Neymar, like, coming on in the last game or starting the last game, doing whatever he wants, Kweku bombing forward. They just leave Casemiro on his own, whereas I think Croatia actually have a midfield that will force them to be a little bit more defensively sound, a little bit smarter. They won't just be scoring goals in the transition like they did, or like they have done this entire tournament. Again, to reiterate, I don't think Croatia
Cut that bit out.
win this game, but I think they've definitely got a chance at dragging this as far as possible and possibly testing Brazil more than they've been tested so far.
Wait, hang on, you're not into the Brazil midfield? Is that what you're telling me? You're not loving the double pivot of Paqueta and
I feel
Casemiro?
like, do you work for like some sort of social media agency trying to get this clipped up?
Is that what you're saying? Guys,
I think
it is mad how good those two players have been in terms of like what they like winning their duels, making, and I'm trying to read this, 4.7 tackles and interceptions per 90. This is Casemiro. He's averaging, anyway, I read it all out and I just can't because it's just too ridiculous. Like the way that they're managing to play together and the way that Casemiro is lying deeper.
Yeah,
It's quality.
It is. They are going to have to be a little bit more pragmatic, I think, against... As Croatia side have got know-how and this World Cup heritage. They got to the World Cup final 4 years ago, so like they do know what they're doing.
Yeah, I really remember that.
Yeah, exactly. They beat England in the semi-finals. So I think this Croatia team are going to pose Brazil their biggest threat at the tournament. Again, this is not me saying that Brazil are going to lose to Croatia. I just think that Croatia will pose them more of a threat than any of the teams have before. And we're going to see the samba dance and the Brazilians. We're going to see a lot of that, but it's going to be a tighter game than we saw in the round 16 for them. And I think that with Brazil, and we mentioned the midfield before, Paqueta's taken up those advanced positions. We saw Thiago Silva get the assist for the Richarlison goal. What was he doing up there? So I do think that Brazil are going to have to maybe rein it in a little bit just to make sure that they don't slip up against a team that everybody expects them to beat.
But isn't that the free-flowing football of Brazil, though? The fact that they are taking up those advanced positions and managing to do that.
Yeah.
The thing is, so far this tournament, their average positions essentially suggest they're playing a 3-1 and everyone else forward, which works against Japan and everyone else, no disrespect to those sides, but when you come up against a Croatia side who have the know-how, who will sit with a deep back four, put three midfielders in front and have forwards that don't score many goals and don't really contribute that much going forward, but they'll be dogged and they'll make Brazil's life very, very difficult. I think the key area for Brazil has been actually surprisingly Richarlison. I think he's sort of like the player that they've been able to rely on in every single game because he always turns up, he always has a moment. As for Croatia, they have Joško Gvardiol, who's been linked to Chelsea, actually. You love this guy.
Oh, man, he's so good. He's so good. And we did the video, and I feel so bad because we didn't bring him up as one of the young players of the tournament, but he's incredible. Probably made the tackle of the tournament against Belgium in the group stage on Lukaku.
That was good enough to win a World Cup.
Yeah, it was
so good.
It's so good. And he's the man in the mask right now. And every time I hear a commentator mention his name, I'm just like, shush, you're alerting other clubs of how good this guy is. He's unbelievable, man. Gold standard. He can play football. He's strong in the tackle aerially. He's good, although he has shirked a few aerial duels just because he is wearing that mask. But he's a top quality defender. And the duel between him and Richarlison is definitely going to be one to look out for because we know Carlson doesn't shirk a challenge. He doesn't shirk a tackle if he has to. So I'm really looking forward to that matchup, and I feel like if Croatia to get anything in this game, then Vardyar's going to have to come to the fore for them.
The other good thing about, or the other difficult thing in that situation will be with Richarlison, that he likes to drop deep and then link the play. So the concern if I were Guardiola, like, do I man mark him? I guess that's a question for the coach, but it'll be interesting to see that, because if he can shake him off.
He dealt quite well with Junior Ito sort of bombing forward, because Japan sort of have like Maeda dropping in a little bit. I mean, he's a brilliant presser, but he sort of drops in when Japan have the ball, and then you kind of have no one to mark, because they all sort of flood the central area, which is where they had loads of their joy. Cavadio sort of just said, I'll sit off, but anytime anyone's in my zone, I'll clean up. And I think he did that very, very well. The fullback areas are going to be a massive problem for him, though. Barisic had a nightmare against Japan. So did Juranovic. And now they've got Vinicius. And they must be like, oh, man, like we had a tough task already. Vinicius has been outstanding this tournament. I think he's going a little bit under the radar. Obviously, we all know about him. Is that an area they also have to win the battle in?
Yeah, 100%. I think you're right to bring up Vinicius, because he has been, I'd like to say, under the radar and has gone about his business quietly. But the assist for the Kweku goal, and so it's so good. And he's a player that is a little bit underrated. There are big stars in this Brazil team, Neymar being the biggest one, and Richarlison's really, because of the way he plays football, Brazilians have really like gathered around and put their arms around him, and they love the way he plays football. But Vinicius Junior is just class personified. We've seen it at club football for Real Madrid. We saw he scored a winning goal in the Champions League final, and we've seen it in this tournament as well. The man I would look out for, obviously Vinicius is a huge threat, is Rafinha. You could see that he was gutted he didn't get on the score sheet. He's going to be wanting to score a goal in this game. So I feel that Rafinha is the guy to look out for, especially on the right-hand side. He's going to cause them huge problems, and I wouldn't be surprised to see him net 1 or 2 goals.
And what about Marquinhos and Thiago Silva as well, just tapping it between each other against South Korea, just owning that space?
I think the problem here for Croatia is they've got to decide how they play, because if they give Brazil the ball, Brazil will eventually have a moment of magic from someone, whether it's Neymar, Vinicius, Rafinha, Richarlison. I mean, the list goes on and on.
It's mad, isn't it, to list out the players of Brazil. It just doesn't feel all that fair. And given that they haven't been, to return to the point, given they haven't been challenged, it's going to be quite interesting. I mean, all I hope for really in this game is that Croatia do find a way to challenge them, partly from just a selfish enjoyment of the World Cup perspective, and also, I don't know, imagining what it's going to look like if England... Anyway.
Don't say it.
We're going to get to that.
But it is interesting also with the Croatia playing with their midfield 3 and then Brazil with their 2. Then does that mean that Kovacic has a bit more freedom and he can get away from them? I don't know, score a few goals.
And I think Perisic is the man to bring up, because he does an incredible job for Croatia at major tournaments. Normally operates on the left-hand side, but I wouldn't be surprised to see him maybe move to the right and try and challenge like Brazil's fullbacks, because I think that's where Brazil are the weakest. I think that's where they're most susceptible to attack from Croatia. So if it's Militao that he attacks on the left-hand side and Militao's playing as a faux right back for Brazil, I definitely think that's where they can maybe get a little bit of joy. It's just that lack of attacking focal point that will maybe mean that Croatia falls short in this one.
Also, I think people forget Brazil have Alisson in nets.
Yeah.
And then you kind of even if you get past that back line, it happened for Japan a few times.
Extra defender.
And he's just there all the time. It's kind of like you need 5 chances to possibly convert one, and it needs to be a really well finished chance. I back to what I was saying at the start. I don't think. By the way.
Oh my goodness. Imagine if now we've said it so much, I'm now wondering what would possibly happen.
Out in case Croatia do win.
Which, do you know, my prediction is 4-0.
4-0.
Did you know you sometimes see these big... The most common result in a World Cup final is 4-2.
Yeah.
World Cups give you these big high-scoring events.
Yeah, I want to put some respect on Croatia's name, so I'm not gonna predict Brazil scoring 4 goals, but I do think Brazil win this one. I think they'll win 2-0, keep a clean sheet.
I was going to go 2-0, but just to not be the same, I'll say 2-1. Why not? I don't actually think Alisson's going to concede. I'll stick to 2-0. Chaos at the end.
Yeah.
Thanks so much for watching ESPN on YouTube, and for more sports highlights and analysis, be sure to download the ESPN app, and for premium content and live streaming, subscribe to ESPN Plus.